Well,
live. Guys,
no music cue?
What happened to the music? Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Ding ding dong.
Okay,
That's great. That is fantastic.
That's phenomenal.
That sets the mood for sure.
That actually, the show is.
When do we go live? When do we go live?
I think we're live right now.
Okay. Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome. Today is Jeff. Although my name is on the card, it's actually Jeff Johnson's Drink and Draw Social Club today. But before we get started on that, I want to introduce to you the host with the most, the person we love, the people that you crave. Many of you crave him out there. The one and only Mr. DeFeo, as he's known in most parts. Ben, take it away.
Call me Dad.
Daddy, can I call you Dad?
You can call me Dad. How you doing? So, hello everyone. This is kind of a weird show tonight.
Wait. I mean, I don't know how weird it is.
Are we grading this one on a curve?
Yeah. Listen,
I'd call it a unique show. A fun show, maybe. I don't know, but it's a show.
This is filler. This is a throwaway.
Well, not for me. I'm actually very excited about this show.
We're really working on some stuff here.
Nigh on 2 years.
Yeah.
We have permanent guest, Joe Quesada.
Wow.
But tonight, he's official guest, Joe Quesada.
Wow.
There you go.
He was an official guest a long time ago.
Yeah.
So when do I get like sort of made? You know what I mean? Like when does that happen? When do I get made into the?
I think it's happening right now.
This is all it takes. Wow.
It takes 2 years of servitude.
That's a low bar.
And answering some questions that probably will bore you to tears, but I'll be excited about.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, I got to make sure I'm paying attention. So
sure.
But Jeff, since you're doing the questioning, man, I'm all in. I'm all in because you are probably the best at this. I love it. I think it's great.
The Walter Winchell of Drink and Draw.
Oh, fantastic.
Oprah Winfrey.
Let's think of something a little less dated. When I was a kid, Walter Winchell was old. I was like, what?
Yeah, I am a geezer. Well, I mean, so I want to just I want to cover some generalities, but we've covered so much of our personal stuff and our careers on the show already. I'm just going to kind of skim a lot of the stuff that you're probably used to answering. And then I wanted to, as a fellow artist, I kind of really wanted to pick your brain and do a deep dive on your process and how you make your decisions and your storytelling. Yeah, exactly. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive, Dan. I know that excites you.
I like that.
God. This is like this episode is like Dan's nightmare.
I know, right?
Absolute nightmare.
So,
because it's going to be so hard for him to keep the camera on himself without making it look so ridiculously. Dan, what I recommend, let's just get it over with. When Jeff asks me a question and I answer, just put the camera on yourself. Just put it on yourself.
Just cut yourself.
Gauge your reaction to my answers, and then just come back to Jeff. And this way,
perfect.
You won't go to bed feeling crappy.
Yeah,
perfect.
Because I will.
Yeah,
I will.
That's good theater.
Right. Jeff, before you begin the questioning of Joe, this is called Drink and Draw. Are you drinking something while you?
I am indeed. I'm drinking one of my favorite beers. It's a Bodhisattva.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a delicious IPA.
What is it?
Do you have a Keanu Reeves can with that, or?
Yeah.
Just a tasty little beer. Do you guys know what a Bodhisattva is?
Yeah,
no. It's a Steely Dan song.
It's a character in Point Break with Patrick Swayze.
Bodhi, yeah. Yes. I mean that beer is pretty awesome, Dan. We win with the little bunny.
Nice.
It's very Easter.
Nice.
I'm not a big fan of the taste because I don't like IPAs.
But you're too cheap to throw it out.
And Dave, are you drinking anything?
Unfortunately, I ran out of beer, so I need to do something about that. But I ran out of time. What can I say? I'm a terrible drinking drawer.
What about
Joe?
you,
You're not much of a
drinking?
I'm assuming it's coffee or tea or something.
It's today. It's water. So.
Joe respects his body.
Joe, are you excited about the spotlight?
Man, the pressure is tremendous.
Right.
I'm wearing an adult diaper just in case.
I know. Listen, it's gonna be hard hitting. It's gonna be
Well,
definitely
no, Jeff,
complicated.
you're going to throw some curveballs. I sense it. I just have a feeling.
Well, let's go ahead and start with you as a kid.
Oh boy.
Right. Let's go all the way back. So you're from Queens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I was reading, it said that one of your first comic books was SpiderMan '98. Do you remember that?
Is it 96? I think 96 was the first the drug issue, right?
Oh yeah. So I saw and so I always thought it was really interesting that you're basically a born and bred New Yorker, and Spidey lived in Queens and you lived in Queens, and I always wondered, did that give you a sort of an affinity for the character? Did you have one of the reasons that you liked him?
Absolutely. That's so the story, for those who haven't heard it, I've told it a million times, so I'm always, it's always weird when you tell a story for the millionth and one time.
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize that some people haven't heard it. So the way I got my first comic book was I remember my dad telling the story. He came home one day and he said, there's this guy on the news, this wacky guy on the news. His name is Stan Lee. And he has this comic book series. So the long and short of it, what happened was, I don't know if Stan was on broadcast news or if it was in the paper, but because that Harry Osborn drug addiction arc was not approved by the Comics Code, it became mainstream news, or at least mainstream news in New York. And my father being a young parent, a first-time parent, and seeing a comic book with a superhero, and this guy's really hawking it on the news, and the story is about the evils of drug addiction. What better way to teach my kid about the evils of drug addiction than through a comic? So he took me by the hand and we went to the local candy store. It was owned by a really good friend of his, and by that point I think there were 2 issues out, so I got 96 and 97, and brought them home, and my dad was right. I learned about the evils of drug addiction, but it started a whole other addiction that really probably cost them more in the long run.
Right.
Because I went back to the store and I said, I want all of these, So interestingly enough, because this echoes when I started collecting comics again in my mid-20s, I went to the candy store and I picked up a bunch of DCs, a bunch of Marvels, and my dad knew that I was a creative kid, I could draw, and he really encouraged that. So he put out the shekels and I bought them, and the Marvel stuff just hit home and the DC stuff didn't. And I think the reason the Marvel stuff hit home is exactly because of what you're saying. Peter Parker, I could have gotten on my 3-speed bike and ridden to Peter Parker's house. Yeah. And that, even I knew it was a fantasy, of course, but I couldn't help looking out my window and saying, boy, I wonder if Iron Man is going to fly by. And my aunt used to work in the city, and she would take me to work every once in a while with her. And, we were in a high rise. I'd look out, thinking about the Fantastic Four and the Fantastic Car and stuff like that. It was fantasy, but it was a really cool fantasy. And later on, when I was an adult, I realized that that's why it resonated with me, because the Marvel universe was in the real world. And then I picked up an issue of the Fantastic Four and with the Black Panther in it. And I was like, whoa, this is, because my neighborhood, and this is a very dated reference, my neighborhood, my block was literally a Benetton ad. My best friends were Cuban, Dominican, Italian, Irish, Finnish, African-American, Chinese, and East Indian. So, and that was our group, So when I saw that, I'm like, these books are about my neighborhood. They're about my world, because that's the world I lived in. And it was interesting because none of us thought it was any different. We just thought this is the way the world is, right? We're just all the ethnicities mixing together and stuff. And we didn't even see it that way. And it didn't become a reality what the real world was like until I got out of high school and went to college, and like, whoa, what happened? This is way different than Jackson Heights, Queens, or Elmhurst, or any of the areas that I grew up in.
Well, that's one of the things that I think that I bring it up, apart from it just being an interesting story. I bring it up because one of the things I've always really loved about your work is the humanity of it, like the when you draw a character, that there's a sense of knowing, right? There's a sense of like, oh, I know this person. This is a guy I understand. This is someone that that makes sense to me. And I always thought that your work really captured the humanity and the essence of making these people, even though they're fictional, they are entirely believable.
Jeff, can we put a pin in this for a second? You wouldn't mind?
Sure.
Is this pretty much going to be the whole show? Is this how we're
driver
is this how we're going to be doing the whole show? Is this?
Well, I was going to ask you the occasional question just to make sure that you were still awake.
All right.
Jeff,
Sorry.
why don't we Jeff, why don't we just flash forward to my Spelljammer days, where I do that? That'll make it better, won't it?
Yeah, sure. That's so one of the things that like I said, one of the things I really like about your work is like there is a relatability to it, right? There's an easy way to connect through it. And Dan, if you want to pull up, so there's the Spider-Man cover, that the 98 one, but then also I wanted to show some of your own Spider-Man covers. And that I don't know about you, but one of the reasons I like drawing Spider-Man is because I understand who Peter Parker is. Yeah. Like, and I have a pretty good, like, I feel like, oh, I get this person as a real human, as someone that I might actually know. And I think that whenever you draw them, that you definitely have that same relationship with the character.
I think a lot of that, came out of two things. One is my association with Stan, and the way that Stan would describe his methodology about making it, creating a good character, and so much of it involves the person. It's really about the person inside the suit, right? If every great Spider-Man story, every great Iron Man story is actually a great Peter Parker story or great Tony Stark story. We just call it Iron Man and Spider-Man because it sells better, right?
Right.
But when you think about the classic story arcs that you like, yeah, sure, they involve a great villain and a great premise, but it's really about the heart of it is about the person inside the suit, right? And then the other thing that they all have in common is that those stories all affect the character in a way that it really, really does change them in a lot of ways. So that's kind of always been my approach, and I think that's why I gravitate really to the street level characters, like Daredevil and Spider-Man, and I love characters like Moon Knight and stuff like that, and the Defenders and all the stuff we did on Netflix, and those are my kind of characters. I love the superheroes too, but there's really it's all the New York stuff, the grit, and the real buildings and things that I really dig. But I think most of us, I don't want to talk for Dave, but I think Dave, for example, the way that Dave digs into drawing skyscrapers and buildings and things, especially he was doing Batman stuff in Gotham City, I think Dave gravitates kind of to the same thing, which is just the grit of the city and the architecture of it. That stuff's just fun to draw. It's more fun to draw to me than a fantasy sci-fi landscape.
Right. Well, you definitely make, and this is one of the things I think that you do with the characters. You make them believable and relatable. Is like you also, and three-dimensional, is that you also do that with all of your cityscapes, with your backgrounds. Like New York isn't just a backdrop where things are happening. It is an active character in the storyline, and the way you draw it has personality, and it definitely it adds to whatever the storyline is, which meant one of the reasons I really like, I'm glad that we're doing this, is because you're really great at story, and I have been studying story my whole life and I'm always trying to figure out the math of how to tell a story. What's the best way to draw a page, to create a scene, and so I'm always trying to figure out what the systems are and how the approaches are and study it. And it seems to me like you've really studied just the fundamentals of storytelling, both visually for sure in your comics, but also we had a great conversation just about character development and what makes a story interesting and how to pitch an idea. And I thought, like, this is a 15-minute conversation, but this is a masterclass in basically just the 3-act structure and basically getting
I got you fooled.
Right. So my question is, did you pick that stuff up just by doing it and working with other creators, or did you have a syllabus of study that you went through?
It's a combination of a lot of things. You know, I think as professional comic artists, if we're doing it well, you know, if we have a modicum of success like the group of us here, it's because we just have a knack for storytelling. So what we do, it's not just our style, but it's what we're doing is resonating with the audience out there. So you know, we've all had that sort of success, and we're able to become professional. So I think there's something innate that, you know, some people are just great storytellers, right? Whether they're visual or whether they're, you know, just sitting at a dinner table. You know, you can sit at dinner with like 10 people and know exactly who's going to be the great storyteller by the way they start delivering stuff, right?
Right.
So you know, I think I had a little bit of that, but then we all have to learn stuff. So I was a musician for a very, very, very long time, long before I was into comics, and I wanted to be a songwriter. So
did you start playing music before you started drawing, or like how did that?
No, I was drawing my whole life. What happened? The long and short of it is that drawing was a skill that my teachers could see I had. My parents saw that I had, and they encouraged it. So I kept getting moved through what would be sort of the art system in New York City, right? So when I was in elementary school, I was being sent to the high school to draw there. When I was in high school, they were sending me to the local college where I got to see naked models for the first time. You know, and then there's a bunch of stuff. The details aren't important, but when I got to college, after my third year of college, I think I've told you guys, I failed Harvey Kurtzman's class and I failed Will Eisner's class.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And there are two reasons for that. One was I had no interest in comics. All you really had to do to pass those classes was hand in a final project, right? So shame on me. But the other reason was because by my third year of college, I was fully aware that I was not appreciating. I mean, I had a partial scholarship and all that sort of stuff. And I was fully aware that I was not appreciating what I had. I was so burned out on art because it's all that I was encouraged and pushed to do. And I did sports and stuff, but everything was, you know, everybody was looking at the art.
Right.
So I remember going to my dad near the end of my third year. I very clearly said to him, you know, my dad worked construction. And I said to him, look, I am not, because I'm falling behind in my classes for no other reason than I'm just not finishing projects because I am done. So I asked him, I said, look, I just want to I literally said, I want to take a year off and spend it beating my head against the ground, going and doing some wallpapering, house painting, just send me places and let me, because I know I'm not appreciating how unbelievably lucky I am to have what I have.
Right.
And he got furious with me. And part of it, I understand as a parent, I understand it now, right? He said that it was, you know, it was the burden of the tuition, right? He did not want to have that burden over him for another year, waiting for it, right? And so he said, sure, you could do that, but you're paying for your fourth year. And I had no way of paying for it. Right. But what he was really, my mother told me later, what he was really afraid of was that I would take that year off and never go back and finish my.
He was afraid of you losing your momentum.
Again, as a parent, yeah. I get it. You know what I mean? So
in a sense, you kind of did lose your momentum.
I never got it back. Right. So I went back for that fourth year. I grinned and bared it and literally did not finish that year because of one, like maybe 2 credits. I think it was a writing class and I just didn't bother. So I had to go back that summer for that writing class. It was torturous to just get that 1 year. And then when I finished, I didn't pick up a pencil or a brush for 5 years, literally just didn't look at it. And I was just, you know, I was already into the music thing by that point. So it was a lot of music, a lot of school. And then I worked a lot of day jobs to sort of just support the music habit. But it's a long way of saying that I was really studying music. And I don't mean like theory and stuff. I'm talking about songwriting, construction, commercial songwriting, you know, how so-and-so did it. I would take classes from old songwriters who used to work at the Brill Building, right, where they composed all those great classic tunes.
Right.
And there were lyric classes on how to write lyrics properly for a song.
That makes a lot of sense.
Oh, it was eye-opening, just the little nuances of how to construct a story in and whether your format was A B C B, or whether your format, sorry, I'm talking music crap now, but anyway, but just composing a 3-act story, sort of like Billy Joel, right? Billy Joel is a storyteller in his music.
Totally.
And so that I applied that to my music. So by the time I got into comics, that part was kind of ingrained. And although I wasn't a writer, when I draw, I always said that it's and Klaus Janson and I talk about this a lot, because he feels the same thing. It's like if you play music, you hear the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about what's the crescendo of your story. What's way too often, we've all talked about this, right? How artists will, we have great tools at our disposal. We have, splash pages, double page splashes. We have the ability to break the panel border. We have the ability to tilt the horizon, all these crazy things that we could do. Mm-hmm. And if you use them 10 times in an issue, they lose all impact, right? So you have to look at it as a musical piece, right? Any successful musical piece starts and ebbs and flows, and then we'll get to a crescendo and then bring you back down to earth, right? Feeling hopefully satisfied by the whole thing, right? Wink, wink, think of the metaphor. So I always approach all the stories like that, right? I'd read my script and say, okay, what's the big moment, right? And that's the moment that I have to build to, and use all those tools sparingly, because you break every panel border, nobody cares anymore.
Nobody cares anymore, right?
Yeah, I even see film directors do this, and you guys know, sometimes you see a film director who has a trick, and they use it 10 times in the movie, and really, when you use those tricks to tell the audience, hey, pay attention. This is the important part in the story, and maybe in a 2-hour movie, there's like 3 moments like that, but you'll see a director do that trick 20 times in a movie, so you walk away not realizing what was important, or what he or she was trying to tell you was important to look at, and you don't even remember the special moments or the camera effects, because they all blur in, into one.
Well, too many cannonballs.
Was it
Snyder and the use of slow-mo fight scenes?
I don't want to mention names, you know what I mean? But there, you could certainly see it in certain directors have a particular style that becomes their thing. But the question is, are you using it? And all these effects, I look at them in awe, and then I look back and I'm like, who am I? I'm not a film director or anything like that. But I look at that, and I'm like, oh my God, how much more powerful would this have been if it had just been that 1 or 2 or 3 times, right, in a movie. But yeah, it happens in the professional ranks and stuff. And when you start out as a young artist, you want to use all those tools. Like I notice, and this is not telling stories out of school, but I notice there's a whole really wonderful wave of artists that are coming in. Mm-hmm. And as I look at these portfolios, I'm noticing there's always trends with the new waves of artists that come in, right? There are always these little trends. There was a trend several years ago when with a bunch of new artists who were really sort of leaned on anime and manga, and all the action was going right to left, and they didn't know they were doing it, right?
They didn't get it.
Those were the influences,
right?
So, and I'm trying to figure out what the influences are today. But one thing that I noticed that's probably maybe 60 to 70% of the young artists I'm seeing are a lot of not so much Dutch angles, but panels that are not square, that are angular. You know what I mean? Trapezoids, whatever they are. And it's so disturbing because it's every page. And I wonder if it's just something stylistically that they feel is cool, because it is cool, or if it's something that is used to cover up a deficiency in the drawing, or it keeps you from having to draw the background and stuff. We all start out doing stuff like that. So those are the kind of things, like when I sit with a young artist who really has a lot of potential, and I'll just say, hey, try it this way, right? Because literally I can only think of one artist that does those awkwardly shaped panels and just makes it work, and that's Alan Davis. Alan Davis does that, and it's just remarkable to me, because your eyes still remain stable, and you get it, and there's motion, and it's beautiful. But none of us are Alan.
No, he's brilliant, and he definitely has been practicing for a really long time. Well, I'm really glad that it makes a lot of sense that you use the musical metaphor, because I definitely think that your work has a rhythm and it has a pacing.
Thank you.
That I think you use really well to not just tell the story, but to build an emotional connection, which I think is.
You and I have talked about this, Jeff, and I know that the group of us has talked about this stuff offline. The other thing is you just don't stop learning, right? So I made it a point to read books on screenwriting. Somebody turned me on to Bob McKee and the screenwriting course.
Right.
It was Chaikin. Chaikin told me when he saw some of my early work, you got to go to McKee.
Right.
Even if you ever want to be a writer, right? You have to go to McKee to understand story. And I went to McKee. And it was, it's intense, right? It's 3 hours. I mean,
I'm very jealous that you took the class. Yeah,
twice. I've done it twice.
Oh man,
because I just needed. I just wanted a refresher, right? But anyway, so it's 3 straight days. It's like minimum 8-hour days. It's a one-man show, basically, how he talks about story, and it became the reason I took it the second time was because it became that much more important as a writer and then producing TV shows, because it allows you to understand what's in the show writer's mind. It's great for actors to understand what writers are going through and why they put the words in these characters. It's crazy. And I remember leaving after the first time I took it, and I was pissed because I didn't get any of it. I walked away. There was so much information. My mind was fried. And I'm like, boy, that was a waste, or I'm just not smart enough. And then a few weeks later, I'm writing something, and all of a sudden it just comes flooding in. It had to bake. And I've talked to people since who said the exact same thing, but it's like, it literally is like you've been to the mountaintop, and if you're paying attention, you can really get a lot out of it. His book is a bit dry for me, and I don't know if he's done the seminar in an audio or in a video. But
I've read the book, and I've listened to. He has a couple of audios out. There are some recordings of the class, and there's some him reading his book. There's definitely, a lot of the book. What's funny about it is the subject of storytelling is so interesting and fascinating, and a lot of times the books, the educational information out there about it can be incredibly dry and boring, which I always found fascinating. Like trying to read Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces is a slog, right?
Yeah.
But
don't get Dan started.
Right.
Don't get Dan started.
I'm not keen on reading.
Right. It's annoying. But I definitely think that so I wanted to. Thank you very much. The music thing makes a lot of sense. Like the way because there is a structure to your storytelling, and having a musical background almost makes sense because you're hitting certain notes, you're hitting certain rhythms, and you're hitting certain movements, if you will, in every page and in every drawing, really. Because one of the things I think is really great, if Dan, I mean, that's a fantastic Dave drawing, by the way. God, he's so good I hate you.
Dave, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dave, what do you think? The Kuretake you're using?
The what?
Kuretake?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Nice.
We're using the exact same pen this one.
Beautiful.
Twinsies.
Yeah. So the idea of movement and rhythm happens not only in your sequential work, like your panel to panel work, but also in all of your actual drawings, especially your covers. Dan, can you pull up? I know. Damn it, Dan's showing off again. That's a great drawing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he started when the broadcast started.
I know, right? He just started that half an
Which
hour
one do you
ago.
want me to pull up, Jeff?
Hey Dan, is there any zip on that? Any zip time?
No, I went with gray tone because I know you hate.
I was going to say that's why I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
But why do you
gorgeous.
draw Daredevil with the go-go boots, the white go-go boots?
Well, no, they're actually red. It's just when they get colored, it's just I always like the way Frank Miller did it.
Yeah, those are cool.
Dave, what do you think? Are those white go-go boots?
I think they're white go-go boots.
Yeah.
I mean, the heels aren't quite high enough. There should be definitely a goldfish or something in the heel if you're really going to have them be go-go boots.
I pulled up something interesting, Jeff. I think you'll get a kick out of with Joe's work. There's two different SpiderMan covers, like this one, where you're talking about the city is just like insane, and you know, it's a hard thing to draw like a cool Spider-Man that nobody's seen before, and like a pose, because he can do almost any pose. And here's another one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Hey, you know what? Hey guys, you know what I feel about that?
What?
That's what I feel about that.
I can't see it.
Wait a minute, let's see.
Wait, with the music? Perfect.
Tra-la-la.
Nice. So yeah, there's a flow and a rhythm to it, and using the musical metaphor is really helpful for me to understand it. One of the things Dan, if you can pull up,
I'm kind of busy.
I know you're doing stuff. I have a ton of stuff, but one of the things I want to make sure that I covered, because it's one of my all-time favorite moments actually in comics, and it's one of the first places that I really fell in love with your storytelling.
Wait, hang on 1 second, Jeff. Hang on. Ted here, I'm reading these comments. Ted is saying that because I'm busting on Dan's Daredevil, that he's sensing a bit of jealousy.
Must be. That's right. He's probably right.
You know what, Ted? You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. There's no question.
It's very difficult to draw go-go boots.
Here's what happens. I look at that and I'm like, damn it! All those years drawing Daredevil, why didn't I put him in white go-go boots?
You were messing up.
Yeah,
you're definitely messing up.
By the way, Dan, you put him in boots that are what, mid calf? Okay. Because I go for the lower boots, the ones that look like a boxer's shoe, because Dad was a boxer. But I'm kind of like the thinking man's artist, so I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Dan shoots from the gut. The go-go boots feel right.
Dan is being contrarian. He's doing those because I do the short ones. So
he knew perfectly well.
Hey, can you bring I just want to see the background. What the hell is that? Wash, right? And
a little ink wash for your pleasure.
Dan, could you angle it so we could see it, for God's sake?
Thank you. Oh,
that's beautiful.
There we go.
That is really great.
So you've been doing this broadcast for over 2 years.
Yeah. So Dan, what did you use for the mist? Is that you just is it ink or is it?
I've just been using a Raphael brush, and I just dilute the ink, and then I remember last week when Alex Ross was kind of scumbling with the gouache. Yeah. I started scumbling with like a gray tone, and then I started getting it darker and darker, and so you can see where it gets darker in there.
Okay, so you worked light to dark. You didn't add that in as white out and then or white paint and then.
Yeah, no, but I am going to go back in with white paint at some point and scumble backwards. Can
I ask one question?
While we're talking, I wanted to pull up something. Joe mastered the boots here on Daredevil, and I tried to do these, but the size 14 shoes.
It's funny. I can't even look at that. I can't even look at that older stuff and not cringe.
Right.
It's
just like, oh man.
Well, you're pushing it. You're making stuff move.
Of shoes. Like I sure Nike was looking at some of the.
I like the big feet.
But that's basically what I was doing, Joe. I was trying to do how his gloves don't have the black on it, So it'll still be red. It'll still be colored the same way. Mm-hmm. But obviously this thing will never be colored, sadly. But who knows? Maybe.
Can I ask you a serious question, Dan? What does scumbling mean?
Scumbling means you're here. Maybe I'll do it right now.
Can I see some scumbling? Is there a way I can?
Some scumbling. Yeah. So I'm just kind of just basically the brush is kind of dry.
Gotcha.
So I'm not really sitting down there and making brush strokes. I'm taking the brush, which is kind of split. I guess you
Right.
can't see it because of the focus, but the brush is a little bit split, and then I'm just kind of moving it around in the area where the shadow is coming.
Is this like Bob Ross painting trees?
Yeah, it is a lot like that.
So you're letting the action of the brush, the mechanical action of the brush, make an unexpected line.
Yeah, so it's just going to turn out. It's going to be something. I don't know what it's going to be, but I
And how do
obviously I have it
what's the word again?
scumbling.
Really?
So like stumble and bumble, but art wise.
Yeah, so remember what was that? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Bumble.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I just never heard the word before, but it was such a descriptive word, such a great onomatopoeia. I was curious about
Whoa. It's a family show, Joe.
it. I know, right? I shouldn't have said that.
Jeff, he's making it up, Jeff.
You're always making it up. That is very cool, though.
Thanks.
I
So
would
yeah, now
never.
I have some kind of a little bit more.
And I like how the texture and the lines that you've added back there push it backwards, and it makes it further into the drawing.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to showcase this part of the building.
Mhm.
All right. Is this show about this or about Joe?
Oh, sorry.
Well, I mean, Ben, it's about me. Here's what it's really about. Yeah, it's about me trying to figure shit out.
this amount of focus on me is really uncomfortable. So I don't mind distraction, but I'm watching Dan doing this, and I can imagine like handing this thing into Marvel and an editor going, "Can we have the character breaking the logo less?" And
Yeah, God, so much stumbling.
Yeah, no, but it's like the logo's painted in.
Right.
Yeah, but you fix it.
Oh,
Well,
man,
I did
yeah.
that show for I did a Conan cover that way for Marvel, and I'd done it here on Drink and Draw just for fun.
Mm.
And then Marvel was like, "Let's use that as a cover," and I had to take out the logo entirely because I used the old school logo.
Right.
I inked it in.
I see.
Oh, did you have to redraw the whole thing?
No, I just had to take that out, and then they put their logo in,
Gotcha.
the one they're using currently.
Well, I mean, I have to say, Dan, as much as I love this drawing and I love the action, I'm a little disappointed. You told me that he would be sitting down doing a crossword puzzle.
Well, I do kind of. I mean, that's what my fans want. They want.
I mean, that's where the money's at.
They want to see me do that. I started looking at all the Drink and Draw art, and there's a surprising amount of people sitting on park benches, just sitting in general.
Yeah.
Well, that camera's been on Dan for a good 30 minutes now.
All right, yeah, enough is enough.
Enough is enough. All
By
right.
the way, so let's see. Atomic Building Art mentioned sculptor Sean Nagel. Salute. Sean's a good friend of mine. So I just if he's on, love you, Sean. He's
Awesome.
a good guy and really, really talented. So you don't have to have a camera on me, but just show other people.
Right. Show other stuff. So one question that I would like to that I've always wanted to ask. So I'm gonna fanboy out just a little bit. So one of the the first time I really saw your work was on Azrael. Way back in the day. I remember very clearly we were all at a San Diego convention, and you and I were friends, and we had met, but we weren't that close. And I saw your work, and I went, "God damn it, this is so good!" And he got Kevin Nolan. That son of a! I was so jealous. I was just so angry, right? How did that all happen? How did you get Denny O'Neil and Kevin Nolan, and how did that come out? How much of you? Because it seems like even back then you were designing characters and participating in the story. Like, what was that project like?
So that was actually, I mean, it was, again, right place at the right time. I was working for Jim Owsley, aka Christopher Priest, and I was working on the Ray, and Jim, was, I was Jim's guy, so he was gonna, just continue doing books with me and develop, recreating some older characters, etc. And then I think I did a Legends of the Dark Knight short story, and I think that was it. And I did a little bit of Question Quarter. Oh, that's right. I was working on some Question stuff that Denny had written, right? So, oh my God, I'm working with Denny O'Neil. And Denny was just wonderful. He was really a mentor for me in those early days in terms of in terms of storytelling, right? I would show Denny all my layouts, right? And I made it a practice, even to this day, that it doesn't matter who I'm working with. If I see something in the story and I might want to make a minor change, I will always go to the writer first, just out of respect, and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Are you okay? Because the flip of that is if a writer all of a sudden took an eraser to my art and said, I didn't like that. Oh, I forgot to tell you, you know what I mean? Right. So just out of creative respect, I try to do that. So Denny would look at my pages, and every once in a while I'd make a storytelling mistake, and Denny would be like, no, try this. This is why you don't do this. But here are the reasons why, not just you don't do it, right? Here's the storytelling rules why, which is really, really great. But then Denny had this idea, for Azrael, for this Batman thing. And he asked Priest if he could steal me. So Jim, of course, said, yeah, absolutely. It's a big opportunity. So I think it was at Denny's request, but Denny was the Batman editor, so Denny couldn't edit this book. So it fell on Archie, who was also editing, Legends and things like that at the time. Right. And Archie Goodwin, who I don't think you'll find a single person on the planet who will not acknowledge that Archie was probably the greatest editor in the history of comics. He just
absolutely
had a knack just for story, but also handling talent, grooming talent, giving you encouragement just when you need it, sort of, being the hammer when you need it. So I was blessed with that, Archie Goodwin and Denny O'Neil. So I also learned a lot about, how to work on the other side of the table by watching these guys.
Right.
And Denny, explained to me the Azrael story. And the idea behind it, of course, was, this was all pre-planned years ahead of time, at least 2 years ahead of time. This was the character who was going to become the new Batman because they were going to break Batman's back, spoiler warning, and all that sort of stuff. So, and because all I wanted to do was draw Batman. I wanted to work my way up in DC and draw Batman. And they gave me Azrael, but they said as the consolation was, this is what this is going to be, right? So I'm like, all right, decent opportunity, and I'm not getting Batman right now because it's pretty locked up with Jim Aparo, Brayfogle, all those guys. So Denny's instructions to me were that he designed this designed the father, right, who's basically a knight, and then designed the son to be the sort of modern take on that, modern Gotham City take on it, but then also designed the future Batman suit. But this was not meant, it wasn't supposed to be aesthetically pleasing, because what Denny wanted was a costume. He literally said, I want this to be like the craziest, look at the stuff the Image guys are doing, right? And like, just do that, like this, they go nuts, right? It doesn't have to be functional. What has to happen, and he said, but give me stages of it, because I want the costume, as his sanity goes, the costume needs to become more and more and more insane. So that was actually the job, was to do something that wasn't necessarily functional. It was cool, but it's not going to be very pretty or functional. So I designed all that stuff ahead of time, and then did the Azrael thing. And the person that hooked me up with Kevin Nolan was Archie. And I didn't quite know who Kevin was, but my friends were like, oh my God, you got Kevin Nolan. So I started looking it up. And the fun part with Kevin is, the crazy thing about having Kevin ink you, if any of you guys have had Kevin ink you, he's a better artist than you. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are.
Yeah, of course.
Kevin Nolan is a better artist than you, period. He's a better
painter.
Miles,
yeah.
So I had deficiencies in my drawing for sure, but Kevin always adds a little Kevin Nolan-esque stuff to it. But with me, I couldn't wait to get the pages back, because there'd always be at least one or two faces that were redrawn in Kevin Nolan. He would straighten stuff out and stuff. So again, I learned a lot from it. Ended up having a great friendship with Kevin. We still work together. These days, he doesn't change as much because I'm drawing it right. But he still does, and I love it. But he's one of maybe 3 inkers who really kind of adds something to my work or gets close to what I envision. And because I can't ink and get close to what I envision, but Kevin does, Danny Mickey does, Mark Morales does, a few guys, and then I've had some, pretty weak inkers, you could probably imagine.
Like who?
As I told Dave, I don't like to mention names, Dan.
Mentioning names is no good. I will say that
it's all the subtext. It's
right. I don't want to mention any names, but there was an inker once who inked an entire issue of mine in a day.
What?
I don't know. I don't know. I actually really liked it.
It wasn't because it was late or anything, was it?
No, I mean it wasn't because I blew the deadline. That would be ridiculous.
Wait, Jeff, what was the story about someone getting credit above you?
That happens all the time, Joe.
I do know.
Never in the history of comics, but I heard once in the history of comics.
It's amazing to me.
Billing.
Yeah. That an inker would be above a penciler. I mean, I'm honestly never even heard, I mean, I've been collecting comics since I was a kid, and I've never ever seen an inker get top billing before. But somehow on an X-Men issue, an inker we both know somehow managed to do it.
How was the inker close with the editor?
I always thought there was a shenanigan involved.
Yeah, you never quite trusted.
Right. I still think there were some monkey shines.
Was it alphabetical by first name?
Something happened. By the way, I have to hit a question here because I actually have the answer for this one. So David Barr asks, "Hey Joe, I just purchased your Marvel 1000 single page storyboard from my agent. Would love to know your inspiration for that page." So David, the inspiration for that page, the actual story, came out of, if you happen to watch storyboards, which you should. In the second season, I interviewed one of the world's greatest mountain climbers, and he told a story. He told a story. He told all these death-defying stories. So, by the way, his name is Ed Viester. So Ed was telling all these incredible stories about climbing all the world's greatest peaks, and I compared him to Daredevil, and I'm like, "You're like the man without fear," and he said, "Oh no." He's like, "I'm petrified," and because his track record is also, he has one of the most incredible safety records. He's never lost anybody who's taken to Everest, and none of that stuff's ever happened to him. And the reason is because he's afraid. He's like, you have to be afraid. You have to respect the mountain, respect the terrain, and listen to it. And so when I got asked to do this Daredevil story, this one pager, I thought, that's the line, right? Where Daredevil, somebody asks him, "Where did you get the moniker Man Without Fear?" And then the punchline, spoiler, is I'm afraid all the time. Which so that was directly influenced by Ed Viester. So if you haven't seen that episode, watch the episode. He's a fascinating dude, really fascinating dude.
Well, I mean, this is it's an organic time to bring this up, but I would just like to point out that I watched the Marvel storyboards that you've done, and they're great. Like the Natalia Cordova one is fantastic.
You are the only. This is why I say you're the best of us, Jeff. You're the only drink and draw person.
I watched one episode.
There's the great one with Johnny Weir's a great one. The Hugh Jackman's a great one.
Love Johnny's
the Marvel storyboards one is great. Well, what's sort of the reason I wanted to talk to you specifically about not just your accomplishments and the books that you've drawn, but your approach to storytelling, because in that and then Joe Q's Morning Warm Up, you also really go into which another internet show. It's on YouTube, but it's on. Is it on the Disney Plus channel? Like, is there a place for it?
No, it's on the Marvel.
Okay, so on the Marvel YouTube, like those the Joe Q's Morning Warm Up. There's a ton of great interviews, but also you do take the time.
You know what? There are a few weak ones. Maybe one week.
No, there are.
Yeah, there's one or two weak ones.
But don't ask me because I just said I don't.
We don't do names. We're not doing names.
I don't do that.
But one of the focuses of both of those shows is the various kinds of storytelling and the craft of storytelling and how every person brings their own individual take on it. But like there are some universal fundamentals, whether it's in ice skating or making a movie or doing a fight scene. And I think that that's one of the things that seems really consistent through not only all of your work that you're drawing, but also all of the work that you're involved in when you are producing and when you're working on the ancillary, not ancillary, that's not fair, but like the non-comic book stuff.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, again, we all of us here are really, really fortunate because we get paid to make stuff up for a living.
Right.
That's what I mean, literally, we get paid to just make things up.
It's ridiculous.
But the truth of the matter is that the world runs on story. I don't know if I said this during storyboards. I may have said it during one of the ads or something. But the world runs on story because the reality is, my opinion, the world is complete and utter anarchy. Right? If you really sit back and think about it, it's just like, a meteor can hit you any time and it's all utter anarchy. But the salve to that, the antidote to that, is story, right? Story gives us structure. Story gives us, something to believe in. It gives us something to look forward to. It keeps us occupied and allows us to believe, oh, there is some structure when really it's just madness, right? So let's just think about the story aspects of it, right? So every one of us, whether you're getting paid for it, whether you're a writer, artist, or whatever you do for a living, every single one of us is a storyteller at any point in our life, right? You come home from work, you sit down with your family, or you call a friend. Boy, let me tell you about what happened today. You're already in story mode. You're telling stories all day long.
Yeah.
And that's just the antidote to the madness. We try to make sense of the craziness that happens around us. So,
right.
So I think we all sort of keep this in mind as we write these stories, as we draw these stories, that they are a relief and a release to those people who are reading, watching, hearing, whatever it may be. They're also a release for us, right? Because we're in that, if you get into the flow of just doing it, and we're having as much fun making it up. I'll tell you a funny story just because, I don't know, it's top of mind right now. I have a friend, an old friend who is a real, like, sort of ancient aliens, chemtrails, like just really into that whole conspiracy stuff, right? And like just, I see him very rarely, but when I see him, it's always about, hey, what about this? What about that? And I remember one day I just had to say to him, brother, I don't believe in any of that stuff. And he got a little upset. He's like, out of all my friends, I thought that because of what you do for a living, you would understand and believe this stuff. And I just said, it's because of what I do for a living that I don't believe any of it. Because we spend our time making the stuff we're just making it up, So I can't. Right. I'm always in the skeptic mode because to me, I'm always in that. Somebody's making this up, and keeps people entertained. It keeps them entertained. Yeah.
Well, I mean, our job is the believable building of disbelief, right? Building that ladder of suspension to make it so that it's believable that a guy is swinging across the city. The way we draw it, the way we approach it, like making that ridiculousness seem real is our job. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Awesome. So I know I could go on for a really long time, but I did want to hit one final thing that the sort of Azrael stuff I was jealous, way back in the day. But one of the scenes, and it actually came up in a conversation not too long ago with someone who doesn't read comics at all, and I thought it was such an encapsulation of what makes comics great and what makes comics relatable. And I was explaining why comics are so successful and so part of culture. Do you remember when you were drawing X Factor and you did the therapy?
Is this like a Chris Farley thing?
No.
You remember when you were? Sorry.
The therapy issue. Do you remember that issue? So I remember the scene with Quicksilver, and it's always been in my mind as this is the perfect character moment. This not only is is beautiful art. It's fantastic writing, but it lets me into a character's head in a way that I was never able to get into. And I thought this is, in my mind, perhaps one of the most quintessential moments in comics, right? And I know that's perhaps grandiose to say, but I do think that, I do think that your work on these 3 pages alone should be studied, right? As this is what
I haven't seen that in a million years. Holy mackerel!
Right. So I wanted to talk to you about these particular pages. I mean, the whole issue is great. All of your run is great, but I think these pages exactly illustrate the thing that I'm always trying to do in my own work, and that I really appreciate in other people's works, is like it makes these superhumans, it makes these fictional characters real. And I know that the writing is a major part of that, but also the pictures that you chose to draw convey all of that deeper meaning. It convey all of that deeper character. And so I just wanted to ask you about your process on these 3 pages. Like when you got the script, where, like, how did you approach it? Like, what was your thinking? If you can remember, I know this is a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean I think the best part of that Quicksilver scene is the monologue he has about, do you know what it's like for me to stand behind somebody at an ATM who doesn't know what they're doing, right? Yeah. And Peter was firing on all cylinders at that point. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with him on that book.
Right.
And I can't remember if he suggested the puzzle. I do know that at one point, and I don't know if it was inspired because one scene had a character with a prop, and then I said, hey, I'm going to give them all a prop. Because if you look at that whole book, every single one of them has a prop, a thing that they fiddle with while they're at the therapist. Mm-hmm. So, and of course there are the classic, clacker ball things, right? But I think it was written in Marvel style, and I just we just thought about each character and what their personalities were. I mean, look, Peter wrote the hell out of that, so the job was easy at that point. It was just a matter of pacing it. There was a lot of stuff there to try to get into just one issue. And just, by the way, the whole idea of we're going to do an issue where almost I think everything but the last page or so is just at a therapist, and you don't even know who the therapist is until near the end of the issue.
Right. It's a mystery. It's a mystery for most of the book.
That was bold and daunting, and man, he just wrote the hell out of that. He really, really did. So,
well, I really loved your use of the verbal. We talked about the props for sure, but then also just the iconograph of the snail puzzle, of him doing the stuff, of the clock ticking. You really build his general sense of impatience, and I think that I like a lot of fans and a lot of other people in the story, were kind of always thought that he was a dick. But then once I read this, I actually had not just sympathy for him as an ongoing character from that moment forward, but like retroactively, I then understood him and felt more aligned with him and compassionate towards him. Right. And I think it's a brilliant moment.
It's to me, the thing that does that for him is that line about the ATM, right? Because who amongst us has not been furious at a person who's slow at the ATM? But for him, everybody's slow.
Everybody's slow. Yeah.
So those are the little bits of business, right? That's the kind of stuff that Stan Lee talks about, that humanize a character. And I constantly talk about this, with young writers, young creators. It's like when you introduce a new character, we want to know that thing that we see ourselves in, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what color their skin is. It doesn't matter what their sexuality is. It doesn't matter where they come from. None of that stuff. We're all looking for the relatable, right? And I mean, I don't mean that none of that stuff matters, but I'm saying from the story sense, right? if I find that piece of relatability, that piece that I'm like, oh, that person's just like me, it doesn't matter where they come from, who they are. You just fall in love with them. Male, female character, doesn't matter. And that's the real core and the real secret of what Stan and Jack and that crew was doing. Was they were when they were really successful, they were creating characters where you saw a piece of yourself in them, right?
Absolutely.
It's no different than you go to dinner, right? And with someone there who you don't know is different than you may feel wary, whatever it may be. And once you get into conversations and you realize that you're driven by the exact same things, right? A need for love, a need for family, a need to feed yourself, a need to earn a living, all those sorts of things. And you realize we're all pretty much the same, right? Taking away the culture, taking away all that stuff, we're all pretty much the same. If we could all get to that core, then you're like, oh, I love this person. I like this person. We have different experiences, but our needs are all the same, right? And that to me is also the beauty of story when it's really, really done well. We bring people together. We experience different things. We teach things, but not by pointing out the things, not by leading with the thing that makes you and I different, Jeff, right? The thing that's important is what's the thing that makes you and I, and what do we have in common? Then I want to know what makes you different. What's different in your? Sorry, I should point here. What's different from your experiences than my experiences, right?
Right.
And that's again, that's a long way of talking about that particular scene. That experience where it's one throwaway line about that or sentence about that ATM thing. And when I read it, it was like, oh. It hit me. I didn't understand why it hit me yet, right? It took me a while to understand the story process that Peter was dealing with, dealing in or at a level that I didn't get. But when it's done, when we do it right, that's why we fall in love with these characters, right? Or any character.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things I've always liked about your work is that you tend to have a lot of those. You do that really well. You find that common ground in your work really well.
I hope.
All of us do, Jeff.
Yes. I mean, it's true, Dan. We're all great, Dan, especially you.
Spread it around a little bit.
No, but look, we all know, like, we've all worked on clunkers. We've all worked on really, really special projects. And, you kind of know when you're in that zone, or you hope you're in that zone. The unexpected ones are always the great ones, right? But the thing you shoot for is the commonality. It's also the reality of it, right? Because we, as comic book artists, we stretch the anatomy, we stretch reality. But if you stretch it too far, it just becomes ridiculous and unbelievable, right? But so you stretch it to the point where it's still plausible, and then also we have the daunting task of trying to create three-dimensional movement in a 2D space, right? And that's why we all love Jack Kirby, because that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the craft, and Jeff, you and I talked about this offline a lot about just like, always we're always trying to learn you and I talk, you're asking me a million questions, I ask you a million questions, and you just keep learning, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I think that on that, you've been great. I appreciate you letting me grill you on stuff.
And maybe Joe wants to come back next week.
Yeah.
Maybe Joe, you can come back next week.
By the way, while Dan was doing his Daredevil, I finally finished Batman. So
nice.
I'll post that later today. I got
very, very cool. Very cool.
Wow. This is incredibly uncomfortable. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, no, it was my joy. It was to put you in the hot seat a little bit.
You didn't ask me any hot seat questions, though. You didn't ask me anything.
Well, I mean, the thing I'm mostly curious about is how other people do this crazy job, right? Like, how do we all tell stories? How do we make the connection through a piece of paper to someone who may or may not be 5 or 10 years away? Like, the first issue of SpiderMan that you liked, those 96, 97s, with that particular story, it had an effect on you. It had an effect on me too. And I think that, Gil Kane and Stan were doing incredible work, and that stuff lasts throughout the ages. And like how do you do that job is always the thing that's foremost in my mind. Is like, I don't know how to do this. Yeah, right. I fell in love with Joe a long time ago.
Listen,
I think that was somebody else's. Oh, look at this! Ted's a good guy. I love it. I think these episodes too. I mean, it's always a treat to have some of the special guests we've had, but you know, we get along pretty well, don't we, guys?
I think so. For the most part.
Okay, it's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a good wrap. You know, the story is the thing.
And you didn't even talk about the last time Dan inked me. That's
there's still. I mean, listen. We covered about 1/10 of the stuff that I have written down.
I know. Jeff had a lot of questions. He ran.
I do want to tell this story.
Oh yeah, please do.
So because I get the name drop, I get to do the Panosian humble brag, right?
Nice.
So my buddy Hugh Jackman. So Hugh is about he's prepping for the Logan movie, right? Mm-hmm. And he calls me up and he says, "Hey, there are these." He explains the whole. Don't want to spoil the movie, but he explains the whole premise that there's this whole meta thing going on where there are actual X-Men comic books in the movie,
right?
And would you draw these pages? And I'm like, absolutely.
Mind you, we already had an artist on the book, Joe. On the movie. I was already working on the film.
Right. Don't spoil the story.
Yeah.
So like great. So the production person, I'm not sure what his title was. He called me up. He explained the situation to me. He sent me the script. I read through it. And I was like, great. But I could tell that there was a nervousness to his voice, and I just so eventually I got down to it. I'm like, so do you not want me to do this? And he's like, no, I just have to tell the artist that we hired before Hugh recommended you that that he's fired. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to take food out of anybody's mouth. So no, I respectfully bow out. And I said, but who's the artist? He's like, this idiot named Dan Panosian.
Yeah, I think that's the term he used, idiot.
Near do well.
And I was like, hey, I know Dan.
Yeah.
So
I know that great guy.
So I called up Dan and I said, dude, I'm gonna turn this thing down. And Dan says to me, oh no, I already heard that they'd gotten some of these pages. They're paying me anyway. And I'm like, screw that, then I'm gonna do it, right? But Dan had a whole bunch of other covers and things to do. And so I said, well, why don't I digitally pencil them and you ink them? And so we got the team back together. I mean, it's been 1,000 years. And we did those pages. It was a lot of fun. And then the kicker to the story is the movie comes out and I don't get paid at all. Nothing. Right? This is very similar to your inker gets the credit.
I was going to say, was your name first? Like, where were the credits?
So it might have been.
So, but here's the thing. They have to at least pay me $1, right? Because all legal stuff. So I have to call the production person again, and he said, I have no money. I spent it all on Panosian. My entire budget went on Dan. Yeah. So
super expensive.
So eventually I said, look, you just check with your lawyers. You need to just send me $1, whatever it may be. So they sent me, a few shekels just to cover their butts legally. But that was a fun gig. And then Dan kind of destroyed my art with his inks. And then he did.
I was trying to find. That's what I was doing the whole time. I've been looking at my computer. So
I should have thought to pull it out of my archives. But Dan did this crazy retro, Photoshop coloring on it. So it really, and then I printed them actually. So then, I felt it felt so cool because Hugh had texted me a photo from set where he's holding the comic up and smiling and said, "Dude, it's your work." And I tell Dan, and then Dan shows me his photo, and he's got the exact same photo. I'm like,
yes. I think he put it on Maybe
he either texted or Instagrammed it, one or the other. But
that stuff, I remember that stuff. Well, Dan was working on it. That stuff definitely had that quality retro '90s feel. You guys really captured what the feel of it.
I mean, Joe penciled it the way Joe pencils now, which is like really. There's a lot of detail, and I don't know if they gave him the notes. They wanted to look like really retro. So I dumbed down the pencils. The pencils are exquisite, but I kind of inked them kind of heavy-handed a little bit because the printing was different then, and I know the printing would be, superb for the movie because they'd print it out, they'd have the floppy, but I wanted it to look like maybe the printing was a little bit rough.
And by the way, that was an amazing movie. That was the other upside. It was just like they knocked it out.
What a movie that was!
Yeah, it's great that you guys got to be part of it.
Well, I'm happy to be a part of it. The Dan aspect was.
Well, so maybe at some future date, if you feel like venturing back into the Lion's Den again, I did have. I just had more questions about your storytelling philosophy, and I wanted to pick your brain, but we can do that some other day.
You better get Dan's permission on that.
Yeah. I'm going to have to.
Let's clear something up because I don't know if people are joking. Post that Dan's getting angry.
Right now, Peter's been trying to find JPEGs to upset Joe.
This is a daily thing. We have a text thread that is just a daily busting of chops.
Yes, it's a good time.
I mean, I would never just pull up an image of him holding my cover.
There you go. Yeah.
That would be wildly inappropriate.
So this is Joe's episode. Why would I pull up like just my?
We kid because we love.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's the amount of text messages that would put most people in tears on a daily basis. We all endure is. It's pretty nice.
I like waking you guys up with a daily inspirational quote.
It's very helpful.
Which I alter a little bit, just to make
you suit it to us.
More personal. Yeah.
The lessons we might need to learn that day.
It's meant to lift your spirits in these times of COVID and before you hit the board. Although I suspect Ben is up much earlier than all of us.
Yeah. He looks the poor Ben. Ben looks like he's asleep.
It looks that way.
It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to look that good.
I gotta fix my hair. It takes time.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. He's got to do at least 1,000 sit-ups every day.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thanks, guys, for indulging Jeff. my needleness.
Yeah, you're a great interviewer, Jeff.
Who you gonna do next?
Well, I mean, like who?
We got Jill Thompson next.
Yeah, Jill Thompson.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Cool. That's gonna be great. Love Jill.
Yeah, I will definitely do my research and have some. I'll have a question or two.
I like this Jeff asking questions stuff because we can just kick back and do nothing.
Right. I know. I got to draw all sorts of stuff today.
Yeah.
Hey, also, I'm working on a guest after Jill Thompson. It's a singer named Gunther, and he's climbing up the charts.
Let's hear him. Do you have a snippet?
Hey Jeff, Dave, is that a giveaway? Is that a postcard?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give it away on next week.
Okay. All right.
When Gil's on.
Cool.
Very, very cool.
All right, let's hear a little Gunther. Can we close out with some Gunther?
Yeah. All right.
Turn it up, Dave. I mean, this is important.
There we go.
Dave, lay off the tra-la-la, man.
All right.
Weakens the knees.
All right, fellas.
Dan knows about boxing.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for enduring Jeff's man crush or whatever that was. It was
Jeff, the minute COVID's over, we are going to make out so hard.
Deep, bro. All right. Good.